Well, hello everyone and welcome to a new series. This is the NGK and NTK Esports Cup, this time here on iRacing. My name is Conry Maddock. I'm joined by Patricia Stalizzane for this particular broadcast and hopefully for the rest of the season as well. We are here live at the virtual Zolder for round number 1 of the championship. I'm super excited to be here. It's always a fantastic thing to get a season off to a start here, Patricia, and I just can't wait to see cars out there fighting.
Me neither. I'm very much looking forward to the entire cup. I've talked about this a couple of times. We made the introduction videos. I also made the track guides for maybe some of the guys watched it actually. So I'm curious to hear about that as well. And I think, like I said, we're going to have a very, very exciting race since it's a cup and the chances are so similar. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited for this one. It's we've got a couple of big names from the sim racing world out there. Some you might be familiar with, some you actually might not be familiar with. And so the mix of those two elements of sim racing might be particularly interesting here today. But before we move on any further, we do have to talk a little bit about the format, of course, because we are just broadcasting what is the top split, so the top group of drivers taking part in the championship here today. And well, we have up to 400 drivers can actually get themselves submitted and their applications submitted and take part in these events. So we've got 40 drivers per split as well, and that's going to mean that it's going to be potentially a very, very busy track.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a busy track. I think it's going to be 40 in each, like you said, 40 in each split. So this race is going to have 40 drivers on track as far as I understood, which is quite crazy, and it's going to be super, super intense. Let's see how tight the times are going to be. I'm curious about that. But regardless, the racing is going to be tight for sure, because there's no other way around it since it's so many drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know, as far as the races here today, we'll have 2 races. So we've got race 1, 25 minutes, grid based on qualifying. That is all as everyone expects. But of course, coming into the second race, we will then go on to our reverse grid event as well. And that can potentially cause a little bit of excitement to happen, I suppose. It's probably the best way to put it, Patricia. Reverse grid races, they're always a tricky predicament because you're basically punishing the fastest driver, sending them to the back and seeing how well they can do in terms of the what we call last to first challenge.
Yeah, but it's obviously more interesting for the viewers. That's why we do it, you know. And also, not only that, you also see the other qualities of a racing driver. You can be quick and drive in front and, you know, pull away, but also can you race, you know, can you overtake the other drivers, not just only be quick. So I think it's also important to do that, and I actually like it. I think all of us are going to enjoy it, that we have the reverse grid in this cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, so that's all about the format here. We'll add a little bit more as things go on, of course, but we can have a look at what the schedule is going to be like for this particular season. We start off here at Zolder to begin the season. Then we head into the new year. In January, we head to Motorland Aragon, and then we go to Imola for race number 3 of the championship, or rather event number 3 of the championship. Then we go to Hockenheim. Then we go to Rudskogen, and then we head to Oulton Park for our penultimate round of the season. And our finale will happen at probably one of the most famous race circuits in the world. It'll happen at the Nürburgring in April. So we're still a couple of months from that point, Patricia. But regarding this season, with what we see on screen right now, which track are you particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, I already spoiled it. So I did all of those tracks on iRacing where we're preparing the track guides. And honestly, I really like Imola because it's really fast and the corners are quite different. So you have a lot of, you know, different techniques basically that you have to know for that track, which is why I would say Imola is my favorite for this one. And then obviously Hockenheimring is my home track, and Nürburgring as well. But Hockenheim from the one besides the grand finale, looking forward to that as well. So those two I'm looking forward to the most. And then obviously very, very exciting to have Nürburgring as the grand final race. That's going to be obviously the cherry on top for this whole cup.
It absolutely is, but I have to bring in my British bias into this somewhat and say forward to Oulton Park, okay, as race number 6 up there. It can play host to some fantastic racing, so hopefully we get our stage set for the final race there. But of course, so that's the season overall. So we have a look at the exact timings of how things happen here today. So we've already gotten the stream started, everything's fine, and we're going through the welcome right now. In a little in a little while, we will get in towards our qualification for our first race of the evening. And then, of course, once we have that, we have a tiny little break, not long at all, before we get ourselves in towards race number 2. And then we'll do our recap. We'll have a couple of interviews with the drivers, and then we'll wrap the show at the very end there. But that's how things are going to work here today. I'm certainly very excited for it. But of course, I'm more from the esports side of things. I've commentated on iRacing since 2016. I've done lots and lots of events. You, of course, are a professional driver from the real world as well. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic here as well. But just talk to me a little bit, Patricia, about the slight differences between real life racing and sim racing. How do you personally use sim racing as a tool potentially to then get better at the real thing?
So I think more and more sim racing is becoming important for the real racers as well. I think all of us by now are basically hybrid drivers, which is that you prepare for all of the real races in the simulator. There's still some differences, obviously, like there's different softwares which work, obviously, or simulations which work differently. iRacing honestly is one of the better, more realistic ones, I would say, which is also cool, obviously, for the drivers. And we see more and more drivers coming from the sim racing world into the real racing world. So we've talked about this a couple of times. I think in the future it's possible for those two worlds to even connect. There's been some tries where sim racers race on the real track together with real racers. Let's see how far we get there. But yeah, obviously, like I said, it's becoming more and more important. I think by now you can basically not get rid of it, not just from a racing driver perspective, but also from a testing perspective. They test setups and everything by now in the simulations, and the technical side of it and the programming side of it always gets more and more sophisticated. So I think the further we go into the future, however may that look, sim racing is definitely going to become more and more important.
Yeah, I absolutely feel that way as well. So it's great to get your thoughts live, but you did also record a video explaining your thoughts in more detail on this. So let's have a look at that.
The Toyota GR86 was the car for me today. It's super responsive, so it was interesting for me because I didn't expect that from a street car. It's also very lightweight, so you had to manage the rear-wheel drive and the breakouts of the car. So it was quite similar to a sports car actually. I think the real basics, the theory of racing, such as like the braking points, so the ideal line, learning the track and the simple physics of cars are quite similar. And also I prepared today for the track day on the simulator. So for someone who doesn't have any other resources, I think it's the perfect way to get started with racing. I think that the main characteristics of the car are actually quite similar from the simulation to the real car. It's both very agile and responsive, and the driving style I think is comparable. However, you do have the sequential gearbox in the simulation, which you don't have in real life. We had the manual gearbox. And also you have slick tires, which we didn't have, and yeah, a bit more body kit in the simulation, which makes you have a bit more downforce. However, I think both cars are fun and the drivers will enjoy it. I think NGK NTK made the absolute correct decision making it a Toyota Cup, because a Cup is always promising very good racing because it highlights the performance of each driver and makes stuff like BOPs irrelevant. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it, and I think we'll see some intense and tight motorsports.
Well, then, that was a little bit of a closer look of the differences and the similarities, and perhaps there are more similarities than there are differences between the real-life side of things and, of course, in sim racing as well. It's always great to get those sorts of insights, both on the sim racing broadcasts and, of course, the other way around in the real-world broadcasts as well. However, we do have to move on just that little bit because we need to talk about the event here today. We are heading to Zolder, which is a track, of course, that perhaps not that many people will actually be too familiar with. Of course, given it is a track, of course, in Belgium, and it gets sort of overshadowed a lot of the time by the more famous track in Belgium. So potentially the drivers may not be so familiar with the way this circuit runs. And if you ask me, it is a permanent circuit. However, it kind of races a little bit more like a street circuit in a way, if you understand what I mean, Patricia.
Yeah, the walls are quite tight at some places, so I get what you mean, and the track itself is actually quite tight, I get that, but still, it's a really cool track, actually. I enjoy driving it, and some people know it because I'm quite sure it was in the GT Masters calendar, definitely, and I'm not confident about this, but I think also in the DTM track, so maybe some of you guys know it. Regardless, if not, you'll find out now, and if you really want to know, there's also YouTube videos on that. We took some with NGK NTK as a track guide, as I mentioned, so check those out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we'll have a look around. Let's see what a lap looks like here around this Zolder circuit.
Hi guys, my name is Patrizia Stalizzana. I'm a professional race car driver and also your co-commentator for the NGK NTK Esports Cup this year. I will be taking you on a lap at Zolder and try to show you the most important highlights for it. So let's go. I'm preparing the lap from the last chicane, going on to the straight now. So yeah, for this track, it's very important to carry speed because we don't have so much horsepower and also know the braking points. First corner, we take the Coca-Cola sign, the end of it, shift down to third gear, carry speed, go out on the curb. Don't shift up, even though it's intriguing. Again, carry speed through this double right-hander, make it a late apex. So go on the curb at the end of the corner. For this next one, we shift it up to fourth, go back down to third. Again, cut the curb, but only after the big sausages. So same again, carry speed for the straight, make it a late apex, turn into the corner a bit later. Now we're going into the first chicane. Braking point is around the beginning of the right, left and red sign. You fly over the first curb, not too much because you can get a penalty for cutting the corner, but you can carry it and then straighten out for the straight. Here, next chicane, shortly before the red and white on the left this time. Same procedure here, cut the first corner a bit more and then try to straighten out for the second part of the chicane. This part is quite simple. Now we're preparing for the hairpin. My braking mark is the 100-meter sign. Shift all the way down to first gear and again use the whole track. So go out on the curb at the exit, prepare the throttle as soon as possible, but don't go into the gravel because the car will, break out. And now for the last chicane, braking point is on the right side of the track, the end of the wall. We use the sausage curbs on the inside, but only a bit, because again, beware of the track limits. And here we are at the start-finish line. So yeah, that was our lap around Zolder. For sure not the quickest one, but I think, you learned the most important things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a race. I hope you will enjoy it as well.
We're getting closer and closer to on-track action for the first time on iRacing here in the NGK and NTK Esports Cup. I'm Connery Maddock. I'm joined by Patricia Stalizzani here for this particular broadcast. We are here at the virtual Zolder, very ready and raring to go as far as the championship goes here. It's you always get those sorts of nervous jitters in the first round of the season, Patricia. I'm not sure if that also applies into the real world. It probably does, but you're thinking, okay, this first race, there's a lot of unknowns coming into this. You're not, entirely sure how your race pace is going to turn out. You're not entirely sure with regards to, how the racecraft is going to be with those around you. You're going in relatively blind, despite the amount of practice you do.
Yeah, I think considering the circumstances, it's quite similar from sim racing to real racing. Like you don't know how the car is going to be. Obviously, you've tested before, but still, it's always different as soon as you arrive to the race. And in this case, as soon as you go into the server, whatever, it's different. And then you don't know how the other drivers are going to perform. In sim racing, they also like to tune back in practice, and then all of a sudden come swinging in the race, stuff like that. So yeah, I just mentioned before, it's just crazy to me how much pressure lays in simulations on this one evening. Obviously for us, you come to the practice and then you already get a feeling for the whole environment, and here you just arrive, it's qualifying, race 1, race 2, no break in between, you just sit in your seat sweating, being nervous, and you just have to perform. So yeah, I think it's going to be really intense for the drivers today, so I'm really looking forward to see how they're going to handle it.
Yeah, it should be a whole bunch of fun. And of course, we see some drivers, the drivers getting themselves all set up there out on circuit. And we are actually officially in our qualifying session at the moment. So the way the qualifying works here, we've got ourselves lone qualifying, okay? So it's not necessarily something you can always do in the real world, but all the drivers are out there at the same time, believe it or not. However, they are separated out from each other, okay? And so they have the track all to themselves. They won't be impeded by traffic. They won't be able to get slipstream off of each other or anything like that. They're just on their lone qualifying, and they have 4 fast laps that they can set. Okay, so their current out lap, that does not count. But the 4 fast laps the 4 laps that come after this will count. Okay, so that's going to be the qualifying procedure to set our grid for the first race here. And then, of course, once we get the first race over and done with, it will be a reverse grid coming into the second race, and it'll be a full reverse grid, none of this top 8, top 10 stuff. Okay, it's the full reverse grid coming into that second event. So here's the onboard here with the number 81 car. This is Michael Hadfordson here, who is currently on his lap. We can get a good driver's eye view of this one, Patricia, as he heads his way through the first sector.
Yeah, I think the idea behind the qualifying is really interesting. It's my first time seeing it, and it's really, really cool. Like you said, not only the cup, but also this way of qualifying makes it even more important on the driver performance. It's very, very curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sometimes may see some drivers potentially not go all out here on this first flying out, because it sometimes in iRacing does take a while, more than an out lap, to get the tires up into the right operating range. But we'll see how things go here. And you may also see drivers, disappear from the track, take tow back to the pit lane, and then get back out there just to make sure that they're always hitting the sweet spot of those tires on that the second fast lap, shall we say. But we don't have any times in just yet here, but we are going to get some in imminently once these guys come across the line to complete their first laps.
Yeah, but I think, as you said, I think experience at the end of the day will play kind of a role today, Some of them will know how to manage the tires, all the tricks, I would say, on iRacing that they can use right now in qualifying, but also in the race. So let's see what they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and of course, they have a 10-minute time limit here, and it's important to note that when the checkered flag drops in these lone qualifying sessions, they will not, I repeat, they will not be able to finish their lap. So that's a little bit of a slowdown out of the final corner there for Helfridsson. So he's going to head his way across the line, not carrying that too much speed. So it might have to be one of his last flying laps that he'll actually set a representative lap time there. But we see Norbert Leitner go to the top of the qualifying order in the very early stages, but that's quickly usurped by Alexander Tieber. Puts that number 16 onto pole position by just under 0.3 of a second. And it's an important thing to note, because we haven't covered it yet, Patricia. These cars all have fixed setups. So these guys, they're all racing on the exact same setup, the exact same cambers, tire pressures, all of that. So the only difference really is the driver.
Yeah. It gets honestly, it's so crazy. This is very, 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 very stressful in my opinion, because honestly, it's a cup fixed setup and the qualifying is alone. This is very, very interesting. I'm curious about the time finishes.
Yeah, I'm super curious as well. We're riding on board with the current pole position sitter. That's Alexander Tieber. Of course, he used to compete at the very top level here on iRacing in the Porsche Esports Super Cup, which is so you know the caliber of driver that we are talking about here as well. Several times podium finisher in iRacing special events as well. So a very, very accomplished driver indeed. So it's not necessarily a surprise that he's currently leading qualifying here for the moment, but there might be drivers further down the order that could potentially put in a good lap time to try to challenge. Of course, you've got Leitner there in second place here at the moment, and he has quite an iRacing history as well. So right now, the drivers I expect are at the top of the order, but you can see Tieber just fighting with the wheel, and he decides to actually abandon that lap there.
Yeah, at the end of the last corner basically, and it's just 4 minutes to go. That's really, really tight. But also I see they're fighting with the car. They're really pushing it to the limits. As I mentioned before, it's quite hard actually to push this car to the limits because the rear does break out quickly. So finding the edge of how quick you can go into the corner or drive into the corner is quite difficult.
It is. It really is. We're right on board though with Dominic Plona, who currently is qualified a little bit down the order for the moment, down in 20th place, but still time and potentially a lap or so for him to improve on that particular time. But as we hit the brakes here, down in towards what is the first chicane here, so the Kleiner chicane. This is always a tricky spot at this track, Patricia, especially when it comes to the first 1 or 2 laps, where everyone tries to go into there pretty much side by side, which doesn't always end well.
Definitely, not just like in the pack. I 100% agree with you. It's so difficult. That is actually, in my opinion, the hardest corner in this track because you tend to over push. So you overfly, get track limits, whatever, or just, shake up the car and have a very bad exit. So yeah, not only in the race, but also now I think the drivers are really struggling there because you can lose a lot of time if you go too slow. Obviously, if you lose a couple kmh on a straight, or if you brake too early on a straight, which obviously it's not a straight, but you know what I mean, in a fast corner, that makes a lot of tense, So yeah, it's definitely a tricky corner.
Yeah, and well, one of potentially a couple tricky corners at this racetrack as we see Plona head his way out of the final chicane there. Let's see what the lap time is going to be for Plona, because down in P21 now, does he improve any positions whatsoever? We'll have to see as he comes across the line, and I don't think that lap was valid. Sometimes here on iRacing, you have to get a completely clean qualifying lap. You can't get any incident points, is what we call them, by going off track and exceeding track limits. Once you do, that means your lap is, well, for all intents and purposes, deleted.
That's very, very tough on the drivers, really. All those aspects make it really hard for them, so they have to fight with a lot of the things right now.
Yep, they
really see, like, still they're all in the top 10, in the top 10 they're all in 1 second. That's quite tight considering the circumstances.
Yeah, it really is, and it shows, how close the caliber of drivers we have here are. He's Thomas Simon, who's a name that does grace our broadcast here on RacePort a good couple of times a year, as he heads his way through on one of his final qualifying laps. You can see how lively these cars are as he tries to negotiate these corners. Thomas Simon, of course, did compete on a World Championship level here in iRacing in the Grand Prix series in the Zolder open wheelers. And also is quite experienced in the Lotus 79 as well. So a lot of open wheel experience here for Simon, but trying out the tin tops and doing quite well.
Yeah, he definitely is in the top 10 out of how many drivers. Like I said, and under these circumstances, I think you can be quite proud of yourself if you're managing to be in the front of the pack today.
So Simon out of the final chicane then, 55 seconds left on the clock. So he's got a 1:45.309 to beat in terms of his best time, and we'll have to see. He does not improve on that particular lap, just a couple of hundred slower than his fastest lap. Vince Peters does go a little bit faster. He's in P4 right now, but not fast enough. to be able to improve position. Robbie McAfee here heading his way across the line now does not make any sort of improvement on his particular best lap time. So the last flurry of flying laps are coming through now. Here's Verla in the number 5 car, does improve up into P11 there for the number 5. Valero has not set a time just yet, and that was what this is one of those drivers coming in. I saw on the entry list and thought, maybe Valero will be up towards the front, inside the top 5 at least, but he's not even going to get a lap in at this point because time will expire, and in a lone qualifying format, you can't complete your lap. There it goes.
Ah, that's so tricky. Oh boy. I think I'll be struggling so much with this because it's so hard to really find the sweet spot on when to, you know, go out and try again and how to stay in and just take the bad lap. I'm not sure what's better, but I think in this case, maybe it would have been better to just take the lap and just have some time in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. He had 4 opportunities, but either just didn't work out on some of them or just got them all invalid. So that is an awful thing to happen there for Valero. But we will be able to get ourselves our starting grid, our first ever starting grid here on iRacing for the NGK NTK Esports Cup. It's Alexander Tiber taking pole position for Urano Esports, with Norbert Leitner lining up on the front row as well. Jeffrey Lund will line up in 3rd place with Vince Peters in P4. Daniel Muth in P5. Thomas Simon for Veloce will line up in 6th. Robbie McAfee there in P7 with Jesper Eriksson in P8. John Ellen in P9 with Dominic Plona in P10. Leandro Villa in P11 with Peter Zuber in the 12th spot. Muscat will line up in P13 with Kaibach in P14. Romero 15th with Fredrickson 16th. Viewers in P17 and Dove in P18. Then you got Pentola in P19 with Halfordson in P20. Simonitz in P21 with Venda in P22. De Batista is in P23 with 24th going to Aliu. Then you've got Sergio Maturana in P25 with Nats Adati in P26. Sophie Aronwen in P27 with Dean Bella in P28. Then you've got 29 and 30 taken by Susko and Sealy. And then, of course, that is going to be the entirety of our... Well, not the entirety of our starting grid. We just had a little bit of a delay there. It's Noah Hendricks there in P31 with Christian Orban, in P32. Yvonne Hufler in P33 with Golf Valero, P34. And Daniel Nichols, another driver that wasn't able to set a valid qualifying time. He starts in P35. Right at the very back of our starting grid here today, here's a look at a good couple of our drivers that will be taking part here today. They've decided to share the view of themselves at home, so we can be perhaps a little bit more engaged with their races, and hopefully we don't see too many frustrated reactions out there, depending on how the racing is going. But remember, it is a rolling start here, so we are behind the pace car for the formation lap here, and then we'll see that safety car basically pull down on towards pit lane and then get this race started. But we do have this full formation lap to get over with first.
But yeah, it's really, really curious that they have 30 drivers and it's all in 3 seconds. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised. That is really, really tight.
Yeah, welcome to how close sim racing can be at the very top level of things, because yeah, it can indeed quite often be that close. There's our pole position sitter, Alexander Tiber, looking pretty cool, pretty confident, and pretty calm here at the moment, especially, you know, given the situation. He's on pole position for the first ever race of the season. That's got to be a nerve-wracking prospect, right?
Definitely. But I appreciate the drivers still showing their cameras, because that's also a really cool thing compared to real racing, that you can actually see what's going on behind the wheel. Because usually you just see the car and don't know what's happening, what kind of chaos is going on inside of the car and with the driver. And here you can really see the emotions. I think for a viewer, that's quite cool.
Yeah, I think it is as well. It's been a great little addition that we've made to our broadcast for the last, I think, 2 years or so. We or even more than that at this point, where it's been more of a regular thing, and it's great to see, because it gives that little bit more of a personal connection to the drivers out there. They're not just virtual cars going around the circuit. They are flesh and blood, so to speak. But you can see these guys now heading their way through towards the back end of the lap. We're just about to get ourselves our first race of the season underway here at Zolder. And even after this one is done, you want to stick around because we have a second race with a full reverse grid. Yes, you heard that right. But we've got to get this one out of the way first. It's the first season of NGK NTK Sparklers Esports Cup here in at Zolder. We're about to get ourselves underway. Alexander Tiber to the line. And we're green here at Zolder, racing down the pit straight down towards turn number 1. Tiber has been able to stretch his legs pretty much immediately, but Leitner has to try and cover off some hard-charging Jeffrey Lund and Vince Peters here down in towards turn number 1. Lund's going to have to be sort of caught out to dry there on the outside as you see this entire pack swarm their way in towards the first 2 turns here at Zolder. The front 5 have gotten themselves single file and relatively okay through the first couple of corners. Still fighting behind, though, between Robbie McAfee and Jesper Eriksson, I believe it is, back there. But no, they will fall in line as well. Ploner in a side-by-side battle with a car on the inside as well, but everything clean through the first couple of corners. Now, this is where the big trouble spot is, and perhaps I've cursed the race already as we see a driver in the wall there with quite heavy damage as they negotiate the Kleiner chicane for the first time. Car out into the gravel. Lund's dropping down the order on the timing screens as well, so we had a good first couple of corners, Patricia, but it seems like once we got to that chicane, or just before the chicane, the problem started happening.
And I was about to say, you kind of spoiled it, because it was a really, really clean start, actually. Like, I'm amazed how clean they went through it. Nobody broke out. Because I'm not sure what happened there. I'm curious to know who it was and what happened. Did they crash or did he just break out?
Yeah, that might be a very, very good question there as we look a little bit further back through the field here. This is down outside of the top 16. It's down near Oscar Fredriksson. There we go, in the number 4 car. That's having to battle with all sorts of cars around it. But now they've got themselves a little bit single file. There's little signs to dive down towards the inside, in towards the final chicane here. And that's the exact move that Halfridsson is going to do in the background somewhat there, as we head down the pit straight for the second time in this event. 3 wide in the back there. I believe that was Alessio Bender in the middle of all of that, but I think they'll be able to sort themselves out for turn 1. No, Bender will give the squeeze to Halfridsson on the inside there. A little bit of a door check further back as well. It's a little bit chaotic here in the mid-pack.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. They're fighting really, really hard. And you can see that some really have different driving styles. That was a bit of a nice push there.
Yeah, that's Mergim Aliu out in towards the gravel there. It all got a little bit too hot to handle in that mid-pack there. Contact coming off the corner. I think it was De Battista in the number 9 car that was also involved in that one, I believe. So that's one for the stewards to look at potentially, as we potentially might be getting a replay of that sort of situation in towards the first sector. But yeah, we've had a. Excuse me, that was our first little incident. Sorry, these are the incidents from the first lap of things. Oh, that was Sarah Dove hard into the wall there. That's unfortunate, but unfortunately can and does happen on the first lap.
Yeah, it does happen. And she was kind of, it's a girl, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's even worse. Go girl. I hope she makes it back into the midfield at least, so she can push back, but it's too bad. Obviously, in the first lap, she was pushed out of track a little bit, and then she lost the rear. That happens, but it's still a pity.
Yeah, she's also not the only one in this race either. So, yeah, great representation here as we see Sergei Ratarana have a bit of a problem through the skate. Ooh, that's a heavy impact with the tyre barriers there. And thankfully, the debris doesn't cause damage here in iRacing. Otherwise, the people collecting that bumper might have had a bit of a problem. Yeah, returning back to the live pictures then, the action, or rather most of the action kind of still happening in this mid-pack, just inside the top 20, in and around where Oscar Fredriksson is. We've got Alexander viewers there down, like trying to apply a pressure to the back of Fredriksson, but Fredriksson's doing rather well with it at the moment. Things have calmed down here on the 3rd lap of things in this first race. Everyone's strung out single file and perhaps just calmed themselves down a little bit from that hectic start.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, that's normal that after the start they kind of penned in and, you know, find some order. Now it's going to be about the pace. Let's see who can manage to have the race pace. That's obviously the key question. It's one thing to get the lap in out of 4 and just perform in 1 lap, but can you hold it for 25 minutes?
Yeah, that's the thing. That is definitely the thing indeed. Is we're riding on board with Fredriksson at the moment. He's getting a lot of airtime so far in this race, so I imagine he's going to be pretty happy with that. But you can see he's getting a very, very good run for that. He gets corners and perhaps too good as he runs into the back of Romero there. Is able to get down towards the inside of him. Is he clear? Not quite clear just yet. Romero will try and fight back. Here comes the number 26 as well, trying to follow through in the tyre tracks down the inside. Well, Fredriksson is clear, but viewers will have to try and continue to fight this one out with Romero down towards the final chicane. Romero will have the inside here and is almost clear, but just can't quite get across and has to continue on the slight overlap in towards these apexes here. And viewers trying to get himself a good run off the corner, but he was stalled out somewhat by that car directly ahead. And now he's going to come under pressure from Alessio Bender. And actually, viewers will just get himself completely out of the way there. Potentially might have had, and yes, he did, have a slowdown penalty for track limits coming through that final sector.
I really need to point out how you can see how bouncy the cars are. It really leans forward and to the rear when they brake and accelerate, and also when they go into the corner, the rear kind of breaks out. So it's really, really tricky to drive this car. So when he went into the bumper of the other guy and the exit of the chicane, I must say, you know, it's very hard to balance the car because as soon as you brake, you really have the whole physical forces. Oh, that was a nice move.
Yeah, it got a bit sketchy.
That was a nice move.
Yeah,
that was a really nice move.
Indeed it was, but it might have been too close for comfort. But Jeffrey Lund just arrives on the scene and gets the overtake done on Ericsson as well. So you can see, you know, those guys both lost a lot of time going side by side through the chicane there, and Lund just goes, okay, thank you, I'm just going to pick up at least one of the positions coming off the corner and running the correct line. So, you know, that's just one way you can just pick up the pieces.
Definitely. It's back to the thing that how jumpy the cars are. You see how they're even taking off on 2 wheels. Like, this is so tricky. I really need to point out what kind of performance they're delivering here right now. So obviously they're still quite in order, but the racing that's happening, it's really, really difficult to do that, to pull that off actually. So that move was impressive. I'm not gonna lie, that was a really impressive move, how he literally flew over that curve and still managed to catch it.
Oh, this battle continues on, and we was involved Plono. We're riding on board with Plono now, actually, as the fight happens ahead of him. As Alessio Bendo, that's just about been able to make his way through there, as Plono just tries to follow through in the slipstream of that number 26 ahead. Is he going to be able to angle his way down the inside for turn 1? No, he's just going to stay on the racing line, try to follow these cars through, but perhaps having a little bit of a think about that Kleiner chicane as the next attempt to try and get through. There's some slightly differing lines being taken by the drivers here. Bender's actually slow off the corner, and you can see how much pressure Viewers is putting on him as he's now being able to get himself towards the inside here for Lucien. This is turn number 4, but again, these guys just absolutely nose to tail.
Absolutely. And like I said, like I mentioned before, the different driving styles are really coming out. Some are kind of going slower into the corner, but accelerating sooner and winning that. So that's how he actually could pull off that chicane move. And some fly into the corner, but struggle at the exit, obviously, because of the rear breakout. So it's curious to see, or it's interesting to see how like different techniques at the end of the day during the race turn out to work.
Again, we're riding on board here with Plono, who is seeing all of the action happen ahead of him, but hasn't quite been able to pick his way through just yet. He is down based off of his starting position. He's down in P16. He did start in P10. Got to be careful into the braking zone to not run over each other, but they're all able to make it work out. But yeah, Plono's on a little bit of a recovery drive here at the moment, having lost those 6 spots since the very start of the race. Still some time in this race to get those positions back. Well, at least 2 of them are directly ahead of him. But the problem for Plono is that maybe 2 cars behind is a hard-charging Gal Valero, who started second from last. He's gained 14 places up into P20.
I do think Polona is kind of actually struggling to pass those guys in front of him. It seems that he's quicker though, but he just doesn't get the chance to take, to take the positions.
Yeah, well, I have to correct myself. Valero, he's up 16 spots from where he started, up into P18, so massively hard charging. We have a potential battle brewing inside of our top couple of positions because we haven't really talked much about these guys. These guys have been very quiet and have kind of spread out from each other here for the moment, but potentially might have a bit of a battle on for P5 between Daniel Muth and we've also got, well, a battle for P4 potentially with Tamas Simon directly down the road, and you could potentially count Leitner in this one as well. So given the right circumstances, we might have a 3-car train for P3 in the not too distant future.
Definitely. They split out, but they split out in groups, so we still have all these fights going on all over the track because someone's holding up in front. I think it's actually quite difficult for them to overtake at this tight track.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're seeing. We're seeing decent attempts, but not a lot of conversions, shall we say.
And then you see them, sending it into the chicane because I think they run out of options after a while. I think that's a. If we talk in the interviews later to the drivers, I think that's an interesting question I'm curious about. Whether they thought that the overtaking was good to do. Oh, that was a clean overtake. That was a clean overtake. I think he waited for a mistake still. I think it didn't come out of the blue.
Yeah, McAfee is also weaving down the straight ahead of these guys, so I don't know if there was a little bit of awkwardness between the two of them and McAfee's trying to tell someone off or not, but they're continuing the battle behind. Ericsson trying to go the long way around at turn 1, which is not always successful, and Lund is able to hold that one up, but a surprise dive to the inside of turn 2, and there's a door bang coming off the corner. A bit of contact between the two. Lund keeps the position, but you can see the desperation there from Ericsson, feeling like he doesn't want to stick behind here for too long. He might be feeling that he's faster in clear air.
Let's see if he's going to send it into the chicane as well. I kind of have a feeling. Let's see if I can spoil it as well like you did.
Yeah, but, well, potentially. We can sometimes will things into existence as commentators, but no, they're just going to...
He kept it clean. All good.
Yeah, they're just going to be line astern into the chicane as they go quite heavily over those curbs every single time. I imagine the suspension's not... well, we'll have to see because they're fixed setups, aren't they? So they can't exactly set up for going over curbs here. They just kind of have to deal with what they've been given. And right now, Alexander Tiber has a 1.1 second advantage over everyone else at the moment. So he feels pretty comfortable with it.
For sure. Tell me, you're the expert. When they have some damage, is it staying for the entire race? Do they have to go into the pits, or does it kind of repair itself after a while?
Yeah, the damage that you'll see, it will stay there. So.
Oh yeah, that's shit.
Yeah, and it does affect the performance of the car. So you can. If you get a little a bit of a shot to the front end, you might get a little bit of engine damage. You might be down in terms of the top speed. If you get a bit of aero damage, I mean, you can have balance issues as well. You can get damage to the wheels and the suspension, which will affect the performance and the handling as well. So yeah, the damage model is certainly in full effect here in the iRacing side of things, and of course in the NGK and NTK Esports Cup, you do have the option to turn those off in hosted and leagues if you so want, but not many people do because everyone wants that full sort of realism.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I was about to say it's quite close to how to real racing actually at the end of the day right now, for the race at least.
We have a little bit of a battle back in the pack here. We've got De Battista having a little bit of a go and a little bit of a battle with Suzuka here. Suzuka trying to get the cutback off of the corner here. Will make it side by side down in towards the chicane, and De Battista is just going to back out of that one. He doesn't feel like going side by side through such a tight and tricky portion of racetrack. He's instead going to cut his losses there and not risk a big accident.
Yeah, sometimes that's for the better, isn't it?
Yeah, it's race preservation.
Talking realism as well, I think obviously it's easier on the stewards if you keep these damages on, because then they're not as intrigued to kind of bump into their colleagues,
Yeah, absolutely, because you might risk coming off worse in terms of a bit of contact. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Sure.
But Running aboard with Baptista here. It's a pretty action-packed race for him so far, down in P24, still trying to improve positions here. Of course, he didn't have the most ideal start to the race. He started in P23, so he's a net loss of 1 position here at the moment, as we see a battle a little bit further up the field now. Down up inside our top 10, it's Ericsson again attempting to get an overtake done on Jeffrey Lund, but Lund holds the position once again. So Lund is proving quite a tricky customer to try and overtake here, and that was a bad run through the corner there for Ericsson. It's now put him under pressure from, I believe that's John Ellen in that purple car, as they head their way through the exit of the first sector. You know, you can try and get a good run out of here and make things happen into the chicane, but it's a high risk but potentially high reward move into here.
Yeah, but it is really high risk. We saw it before. As soon as you go out into the gravel, it really pulls you in, and it's very hard to not lose the car there. So I think he did make the right choice by staying behind.
Yeah, he did, and there might be an altercation ahead as well, because Lund almost got right onto the back of McAfee there, but the run didn't quite turn out the way he thought it would, and it sort of yo-yoed back into potentially Ericsson's favor now, because Ericsson's quite close behind. So it's funny how, you know, these things do fluctuate in and out from time to time. There's the big dive though from Ericsson, and there's contact in the middle of the corner again, and Ericsson's going to be slow off the corner here, might have to lose the position to John Ellen in that black and purple car. He has the speed on the way down in towards the final chicane. That's the risk, Patricia. If you go for that move and you mess it up, you might end up losing positions rather than gaining them.
Exactly, you end up losing them, and you know obviously how hard it is to gain them back. As you see, it's quite tricky for them to overtake on this track.
Yeah, it has been very, very difficult, because as soon as you potentially go for a move, you could be going backwards. That's just the simple thing there. Less than 9 minutes left to go. The gap for the race lead has come down a little bit, by the way. I've been watching it over the last while. It's down to 0.6 of a second now, so that's come down from what was 1.1 seconds. So potentially things happening up there. Ooh, a big squeeze onto the apex there. Pentula with Fredriksson there, as Fredriksson maintains that P20 for now, but it did get close for the both of them on the apex there, but they're able to sort things out. I've seen a lot of squeezes and a lot of pinches to the inside so far this race.
I've been looking at the leading gap as well, and I was about to ask you, do you think if they're saving it up for the end of the race? So we're already like halfway through. Maybe they're saying, okay, it's so hard to gain positions and they know what they have to lose. Maybe just keep it for the end and just send it, you know? We have these groups here for P1, P2, P6. P8, like all of those are so tight together. Maybe they're not risking it until the end and just send it to not, you know, lose a position.
Yeah, potentially, but we'll have to see, because I don't think as a leader you'd be willing to just flat out lose half a second across, what, 2 or 3 laps to your competitors. That sounds a little bit close to my liking between the two here. Potentially Peters might have been able to save his tyres a little bit better for the back end of the race than what Tiba was able to do, because Tiba, he did pretty quickly build that gap, so he might have been a bit guilty of again taking too much out of the tyres too early on, and now he's really feeling it. It's down to 0.4 of a second now for the race lead.
Yeah, I think he overpushed the car, and now the further down the race we come, I think the more he's struggling. So obviously I think it's going to be exponentially getting harder for him compared to Peters.
Yeah, and we still got this battle going on as well. John Ellen really trying to make some progress back, but it's Ericsson that's made the progress back, because he's gotten back past him now. So because we remember that little lunge that Ericsson had over Lund that then turned into an Ellen overtake. Now he's gotten the position back. So we're running aboard here with Ellen, who's currently in that 9th spot with this grouping of cars ahead of him. Not going to be close enough to make the move in towards the chicane this time around, and so, like we've already mentioned, it's such a high risk but potentially high reward move into there. But this still grouping has been giving us a lot of entertainment. Oh no, that's Ericsson. I think he's got himself a slowdown penalty. He cut the chicane a little bit too much, and the iRacing system goes, well, you have to give up a couple of seconds of time.
Oh yeah, that's what I was talking about. I'm struggling with that so much. And I was about to say also for me as a real racer, as soon as I go into the simulator, all this like no bumping and the damages and the track limits, they're really harsh on you. So it's really hard to balance them for someone who's not as experienced.
Yeah, there's it can be the iRacing off tracks and the track limits can in some instances be quite punishing. In others they might be a bit too lenient, and I guess it depends on which driver you ask whether they're lenient or harsh. I guess,
sure.
But there's always that big debate, in both sim racing and in real life racing about track limits. Where do you define them?
That's true. That's true. But I think in obviously real racing, you have the chances of someone missing it, and you don't have that on the simulation. If you do it, you're getting caught, and you're going to pay for it. So that makes it even stricter for sure.
Yeah, there was a little bit of frustration there from the 21 of Bender. He just put his hand up in frustration there and was obviously not too happy with the car ahead. That's Sheldon Muscat there in the number 19. So something must have gone on between these two, that's for sure, that we haven't quite been able to see. But that's one of the great things about having these driver cams, is that we can potentially see some of the emotions that go on, because you don't even get that in the real world either. Because you're covered up by a helmet and racing overalls. You're quite secluded in there. But here, well, there's no helmet on. You can see the emotions.
Definitely, and the more important that is, considering how many battles we're having during this race. Like, everyone's still in groups, everyone's fighting, nobody's driving by themselves as it looks.
Here we go. Here's the move being made here from Bender. He's gotten to the driver's right-hand side here on the run through turn 6, onto the brakes into turn 7, like this chicane complex here, and he has been able to get the move done. So potentially is able to calm himself down a little bit now. He's got a little bit of clear air ahead before he gets to the next grouping of cars. But I think he'll be pretty relieved that he's been able to get that move done. Meanwhile, ahead, there's Valero attempting around the outside of Zuber, trying to get the cut back, but the line is blocked, and he has to try and get out of it. So, that's sometimes the tricky thing through that sort of turn 8, turn 9 complex towards the end of the lap. If you try and go for that up and under attack, the car on the inside can just sort of take the middle of the road as a defensive line, and there's no way through for you.
For sure, that's how you do, like Bender did it, frustration. The best way to deal with it is just overtake the guy with a really clean move, calm yourself, get yourself together, and get the position back. Same like Valero just did now. Oh, a little bit too tight to the colleague though.
Bit of leaning on each other. This is not touring cars, guys, but there we go. As Valero again has a sort of half a car length advantage on the outside here, and that's not being swallowed up very quickly by Zuber. So Zuber will have to drop back in behind here by the time they get themselves towards turn 4. So that's another pass to add to Valero's list. He started second to last, and he's gotten himself up to P13. That's from 34th to P13. That is a great going as far as his race is concerned. I just wish he started a little bit higher on the grid so he can maybe challenge our leaders.
Very, very impressive for sure, especially considering how hard it is to overtake, as we've seen. But then again, poor guy will have to start rather from the back again with the reverse grid in the second race. So he's going to have a tough day tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, that reverse grid race is something that we're definitely looking forward to at this point, because it can potentially mean that we get a lot of lead changes in the right set of circumstances as we see yet more battling going on. This is Zuber involved with Bender there once again as they head their way out of the sort of hairpin complex at 8 and 9 and race themselves down in towards that final chicane now. Going to be a bit too spread out for any moves to be happening down into here, but we've just got about less than 2 minutes left remaining. And the exact lap we'll finish on depends on where Alexander Tiber is out there on circuit. I get the feeling, that's going to be a bit close. I think so. I'll hold off on calling it the last lap or not the last lap here at this point. But we see Alexander Viewers once again embroiled in a bit of a battle. This time with Valero. Valero again trying to push on, trying to get another position. This will be P12 if he's able to get it done. So pretty much last the first challenge has sort of stalled out at P12 here for Valero for the moment, as viewers will try to get themselves the up and under in towards the Kleiner chicane, but unless you're brave into here, you're not going to get anything done, and indeed does back out of the move. So that is Valero now up into P12. I don't think he can get another one before the end of this race, surely.
I must say, we have very, very behaved drivers here, no? Like, this is a very, very impressive race. The level is super high, but we've had only a couple contacts, and all of them were not too bad. Just 2 guys that we have out of 35 drivers on track. But I must say, I think it's going to be a bit more of a mess considering the reverse grid, you know? Because right now, we have the battles already. They're staying clean, but I think for the reverse grid, people are going to be a bit more aggressive.
Yeah, I think so too, because they know that there's potentially the slower drivers ahead of them. So it's they want to get them out of the way as quickly as possible. So this is the final lap here. So we have the American flagging rules here, as is applied to the whole of our racing. The white flag doesn't mean slow car; it means this is the last lap. So that's the notification given to all of the drivers out there. We're looking at the battle for the race lead at the moment. This is the one that's been getting sometimes close, but not close enough for any moves to be made. All the action has been happening sort of in the mid-pack and back, but Alexander Tiber, he can't sort of relax here at the moment because he has that second-place car within half a second behind him. You can't afford to make a mistake here on the final lap.
Those guys have been on the absolute edge for the last 15 minutes because they haven't lost like a 10th back or forth, and they're pushing so hard, you can see, and they haven't, you know, like I said, the gap hasn't changed. That is really, really impressive.
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy stuff. And well, for Vince Peters, he started in P4. He's on for a second place finish here at the moment, and well, if he's able to pull off a miracle here in the back end of the lap, it might be a race win. You can see him draw himself up close to the back bumper of Alexander Tiber. 0.3 of a second was the gap between them, as we might have had a big incident between McAfee and Lund further down the field. That is something to talk about afterwards. You just see Peters look to the inside, but he's just too far back to make it happen. And for the first race of the NGK NTK Esports Cup here on iRacing, it's Alexander Tiber taking race 1 win here at Zolder. Fantastic result indeed, under a lot of pressure from behind as well. And if you look at him, you can just sort of, well, he doesn't look like he's won a race, does he?
Fantastic race from start to finish. Very, very impressive. He should be happy, but I think he knows that race 2 is going to be very, very tough on him, so he's not that excited for it.
Yeah, not that excited.
What happened to McAfee? I told you it's going to stay until the last lap. That's exactly what happened. Everyone was waiting for that last lap, and then they, you know, pushed.
Yeah, so the rest of the runners heading their way across the line at the moment. We won't have that big of a break in between these 2 races here. So that's...
Probably won't be able to see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hugo can work his magic sometimes. Don't worry about it. But we see the rest of the runners head their way through. We're seeing, well, a couple of celebratory flashing of the headlights, because obviously each driver will have set their own goal for this race. So then some of them might say, okay, if I finish top 20, I'll be absolutely okay. And that's the goal they set for themselves, because, you know, not everyone thinks it's going to be realistic that they're going to get a race win here. So especially with the caliber of field that we have, but to get up top 10, top 20, you know, that's their individual goals.
For sure. Did someone drop back to get a better position for race 2? Did you see?
I don't know if that was the thing. I did see someone dropping back through the field, but remember, they do sacrifice points in doing so there. And of course, if they if they've been a bit too egregious with it, then maybe the stewards will look at it. But we can see, you know, we're going straight into the gridding now for race number 2. But of course, it will be another rolling start. So we do have a bit of time to go through the race results. So Alexander Tiber taking the race win from Vince Peters by about 0.4 of a second. Then you've got Leitner, Simon, Muth, Ellen. Then you've got Ericsson, Verla, then Romero, and then Valero rounding out the top 10. Bender will finish in 11th with Zuber in 12th, Muscat in 13th with Halfordson, Fredrickson, Then you got Pentler, Kaibach, De Battista, Adati, and Suzuko in those positions further in towards the top 20. We've got P21 going towards Sophie Arnwen with Noor Hendricks. Then you've got Daniel Nichols, Dean Vella, and you've got Orban, Seeley, Hoffelbar, Hoofla, excuse me. McAfee, who had those problems on that last lap. Same with Lund as well. They both ended one lap down, in fact. And then we have viewers just inside of the top 30. Then we got Saradov, Birgim Aliu, then Dominic Flona, Sergei Maturana, and Ruben Simonitz rounding out the 35 car finishing results. So this is now your starting grid for race number 2. It's a complete reverse grid. So Simonitz on pole position, then Maturana, then Plona, then Aliu, then Dove, then viewers in that particular order. So viewers might be in a pretty good position here. He showed a good amount of pace out there in that first race, despite the problems that he's had. So potentially look at him for a good finish. Then you got Lund and McAfee. Again, those drivers that had issues on the final lap. They start further up the field as a result of that incident, so they might have got a bit of an insurance policy there. Then you got Ufala there in P9, then you got Seeley in P10, then you got Christian Orban and Dean Vella rounding out the top 12. Then you got Nichols, Hendricks, Arnwen, Suzuko, Adati, and De Battista rounding out the top 18 cars in this race 2 starting grid. Then you've got Kaibach, Pentela, Fredriksson, Halfordson. Then you got Muscat and Zuba rounding out the top 24 cars. And then further back through the field, you got Bender, Valero, Romero. You've got Verla and Ericsson and Ellen. Okay, all these fast drivers that we saw in race number 1, they're having to start near enough towards the back. So you got Muth, you got Simon, you got Leitner, Peters, and Tiber. Rounding out the last couple of positions on the starting grid. And you can see they've already gotten themselves a formation lap here, Patricia. Not a massive break at all between race 1 and race 2. You have to get back out there.
No, it's crazy. I feel with Tiva just won the race and now has to start P-last after 30 seconds break and just smash it again and go for the win. That's gonna be very, very interesting to watch now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see that C18 on pole position. And of course, was one of the retirements from race number 1. Here is the incident, I think, between the drivers of Lund and McAfee. And actually, not the only one involved in that one either, as you see the rather quick disconnection on the part of the 23 of Jeffrey Lund. But the result is that both of them are now actually have pretty good positions in the reverse grid. They just lose a ton of points from that race 1.
I was about to ask you, how many points do they get into what position? To last position, probably, right?
We'll have to cover that in just a second because they are about to get themselves underway here in the NGK NTK ESPORTS CUP. This is race number 2 for race meeting number 1 here at Zolder. It's our first reverse grid race of the season. It's Simonitz on pole position for this one and a whole bunch of fast drivers behind. Green flag is out here at Zolder. We are racing once again as you see the drivers all fan out, and you can see potentially 4, maybe even 5 wide deeper in the pack here. How's this going to turn out in towards 10 more? We've had a big incident already, a massive one through turn 1 with multiple drivers out in towards the gravel here. Orban's involved in it, Batista. You had Tiba potentially involved in it as well. Actually, he's coming out of the pit lane. He took a pit lane start here, potentially preempting the chaos that might happen. Leitner is still going as far as your top drivers from race number 1, but that's the sort of thing that can and does happen in reverse grid races. Now we've got this run down in towards the chicane, which was our tricky spot on lap 1 of the previous race. There's the big send from viewers down the inside of 2 cars at the chicane. Aliu has to try and take the shortcut, might have gotten themselves a slowdown penalty as a result of that, and in fact I can confirm that, and this one's going to hurt a little bit more because on the first lap the slowdown penalties are worse, as we have 3 wide behind, McAfee in the middle, just being sandwiched by 2 cars on either side. Somehow they get through that unscathed. I have no idea, as we see issues further back. One of the green cars, I think that was Hoofla, maybe, that's had a bit of a problem there. Actually, I don't think that was. There's a lot of cars, a lot of liveries to get used to here, so forgive my confusion. But my word, this first lap has been chaotic.
It has been. This is crazy. It was to be expected, but that was a lot. I think we need a lap to kind of figure out where everyone is, but it's still going to continue like this because everyone's still, you know, obviously coming from the back.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the battles continue on in towards the final chicane. Here's Hooflaar trying to battle it out with a good couple of the drivers around in this sort of middle of the top 20 here. It's definitely a chaotic place to be when you see all of these cars fanning out and you perhaps don't really know where to look as a driver. You see that all going on in the mirrors and you're just hoping that no one absolutely sends it and hits you on the apex of the corner. But you can see these battles going on further back now. Suzuko involved in this. Leitner is in amongst all of this, trying to get himself through, and somehow Leitner's got him through on that as a big incident happens behind him.
Oh yeah, they went into a tandem drift right there, and then they hit the other guy poorly. Who was that who got hit?
Well, there was, I think Suzuko had a piece of that at least. It's sometimes quite hard to tell who's involved in here in the instance here. We have changes
going on right now.
Yeah, we have changes further up the field though. McAfee up into P5. We've got Bender in P6 here at the moment with Valero in P7. So Valero once again doing very well. How has he done that? Hang on. Is that what I'm reading correct there for Valero? He started P26. He's already up into 7th place. What?
It looks like it. It looks like it. I mean, if he survived the first corner crash, then he already made up, like, I don't know, 7 positions there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess he's just managed to avoid it. He's like Moses part in the Red Sea. Like, he's just like, everyone's just sort of, you know, crashing around him, and he's just gone straight down the middle of it and has gained all those positions. But he's got a bit of a battle going on ahead of him at the moment. Sarah Dove and Alessandro Bender going wheel to wheel through the chicane there. And McAfee wrapped around the nose of Valero's car there. And, well, McAfee has to try and rejoin the circuit in a safe fashion, and he does, but albeit a good couple of positions down on where he was.
McAfee's having a really bad day because he was in both races super quick, and at first he was disqualified or didn't finish, and now he's had that little crash. But I'm impressed with how he saved the car though. He went back on track real quick.
And indeed he did. So yeah, a great control to make sure that incident wasn't worse than what first appeared. Here's the onboard with Halverson there just very briefly as he's embroiled in a battle with Ellen on the outside, and now Peters looking to try and make progress as well. Peters started 34th. He's up to 9th. So I guess those incidents that we had in the first 2 laps have really helped those drivers that got quote-unquote punished from the reverse grid, try to improve positions side by side between Zuber and the driver of Ellen coming out of the Kleiner chicane. Somehow they're able to make this one work again as Peters kind of gets roadblocked behind them. There's a very narrow track, this one here at Zolder. You can't really easily find your way through, although Peters again is continuing to apply the pressure while the 2 ahead of him goes side by side, and now he's gotten around the outside of Ellen, gets that pass done. That's pretty easy stuff for Peters, and now he's going to try and get another one. Zuber having to go defensive here down in towards the braking zone. Peters the long way around, carrying a lot of momentum, a lot of confidence in that car, and gets the drive off the corner as well. 2 passes in quick succession for the number 35.
The whole field of like 10 or 11 cars right stacked behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. It is crazy stuff indeed. And well, for these guys, you know, it potentially might be just shy of 20 minutes more of this. So yeah, you got to be prepared for these sorts of things. We haven't checked in with the leaders that much. It's Maturana currently leading from Simonite at the moment. And that is quite interesting to see, Patricia, because usually in these full reverse grid races, you see the people that started on the front row fall back through the field pretty quickly, but they haven't. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, Bender was quick before as well, wasn't he? So he's one of the guys that kind of had to. Oh, did he finish in front? Oh, he's one of those guys who came from the back, isn't he?
Yeah, indeed he is. And yeah, so we've got a lot of drivers having very well, a large amount of positions gained from the start here. We got Bender, who's from 25th to 4th. We've got Valero, who's 26th to 6th. Then you've got Halfordson, who's from 22nd to 7th. Peters 34th to 8th. here at the moment, which, again, crazy numbers indeed, as we see battles going on just outside of the top 10. This long train of cars. Here's Darwin Romero, who's up 16 spots himself so far in this particular event. And apparently, the only information I have on him is that he says, I guess he's a Real Madrid fan. That is literally the only bit of information I have on him.
Most importantly. No, but I know what you mean. Like, the front has a really big gap. Yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah, so
but also that you see they're catching up, but not as fast as you'd think. Because Alessio Bender, he was like 8-point-something seconds off like 3 minutes ago. He's not even going to manage to get close to the guys who started in the front.
Yeah, it's a massive
managed to
gap.
stay in the front quite well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
I'm not sure how fast they are, or whether they also benefited from some sort of crash.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean, there was a bit of a mess at the start, so it could potentially have been from that.
They drove away quite well. Still, definitely. Like, if they manage to stay in front, that's a great performance.
Yeah, just having a look at their lap times, they're not actually that far off the pace, really, because we had a 45.7 last time around from Maturana. It was a 40. Well, it was a bit slower for Simonit, as it was a 46.2 for him. Most of the fast drivers, I'm looking at Peters, are doing 45.4s, so maybe a couple of tenths of a second faster than those guys at the front, but that's definitely enough, especially when you have 17 minutes left in the race, as there's Hendricks hard into the wall, and his was kind of the incident that kind of triggered everything else behind.
Yeah. Well, like you said, 17 minutes is a long time to go. However, 7.5 seconds, considering their pace isn't that off, it's going to be tough. For Valero, who overtook Bender, by the way, just now at some point, and also for Bender to manage to get into a top 3.
Yeah, it is. So for those that have kept themselves out of trouble and found their way through on the couple of incidents that you've been seeing on the replay, they have really been rewarded with a great amount of track position here at the moment. And yeah, you can see the main trouble spots being the Kleiner chicane, being in towards turn number 1 as well. It was very chaotic on the first 1 or 2 laps here, with multiple drivers having lots and lots of issues here today, as there was an issue for... Ooh, is that a missing wheel potentially for Fredriksson, hard into the wall? Because that car was leaning onto the front right, like there was no tire there. As we see back to the live pictures, 3 wide action going on here, down in towards turn number 1. This is involving Tiber, actually. He's on the back of this pair that goes side by side right now, as he works his way from the back of the field. It's Michael Kaibach that's the car in the front of the trio right now. Wöhler is in the middle. And these guys are looking pretty spicy at the moment. And, well, there's the issue for Fredriksson. Just, I think it's a collapsed front right suspension.
Oh, yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
Looks like it. Did it come from a crash, or did it just come from one of the curbs?
I mean, that is a good question, actually. And it's a question I don't know the answer to, because the curbs can be very vicious here, but whether or not they can completely ruin the suspension on one of these cars, I'm not too sure. We'll have to talk to the drivers after this one. It can be a thing, but I wasn't expecting it to be
in real life for sure.
Yeah.
In real life for sure. I'm not sure how it works in iRacing. I haven't had that so far.
Yeah, we're on board here with Wöhler, as he's focusing on that car ahead, but he'll have to be on the defense at the moment, because Tiber is very close behind. And in fact, yes, he's alongside, so you can just see a little peek of the car on the right hand side there. Wöhler having to lose that position to Tiber, and of course Tiber was our race 1 winner, so not exactly surprising that he's being able to work his way through the field at the moment. Although saying that, he hasn't been able to get his way through the field as effectively as some of the other drivers, has he? He's, because we had Vince Peters, he started literally 1 place ahead of Tiber, and now he's, probably, 7 or 8 positions further down the road than him at the moment.
For sure, maybe he was one of the guys.
Ooh, Sarah Dove having a bit of a Tokyo Drift moment through turn number 1. And she'll end up losing a couple of positions here to the crew of Tiber and Wöhler. Yeah, and that's the important thing.
Sadly.
Yeah, that
so
that
15
is.
minutes more to go. She will suffer to the end, sadly.
Yeah, that's again, that's, you know, when you have a slide like that, you're putting a lot of energy into those tires. You know, you're spiking up the temperature, and here in iRacing, they don't necessarily cool down that quickly. So you're having to deal with that, so, you know, overheated tire situation for a long while yet. And of course, like, you know, Patricia, you know, hot tires, you know, they're going to also potentially degrade more when they've overheated like that. As we see a lot of positions changing on the timing screen here. There must have been an incident happening out there somewhere, I think involving McAfee again, unfortunately. Oh no. We'll have to see what happened with regards to that one, because I'm seeing Zuber also out of the event as well, and dropping down the order. So we might have to get ourselves a replay of this one here imminently, as yeah, it was an incident. So we're seeing Michael Kaibach involved in a little bit of a fight here at the moment. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what happened between the two drivers that we saw very quickly fall down the order. And in fact, we will get ourselves the replay now. It was a fight coming off the incident limit. We hadn't talked about this just yet. Okay, let's explain it. For those unfamiliar to iRacing, you can collect instant points. Okay, so you get 1 instant point for going off track. You can collect 2 instant points for a contact with a wall, or light contact with another car sometimes, or a loss of control. And then you can get 4 instant points for a car-to-car contact. And it doesn't matter who did what. It doesn't matter who's at fault. Both drivers will share the incident points. You have a maximum of 17 incident points in races like this. So once you go over 17 incident points, that is it. You get disqualified.
This is really, really crazy. I was wondering what was going on. I didn't say anything because I was so confused. I was like, what's happening? I saw those cars disappear and I didn't really understand. But that makes sense, and that's crazy. That's really, like, it's restricting those drivers. It's like a black flag in real life, just that you get kicked immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can get unlucky about it. You might just get a couple off tracks, you know, a couple of spins here and there, and then all of a sudden you get someone crashing into you. That wasn't your fault, and you're then very, very close to the limit.
Gone.
So yeah, you do have to be very, very careful with it sometimes, and try and conserve those instant points for potential things that might happen a little bit later on. Of course, we're explaining things.
Really had to.
Yeah, absolutely.
We lost like a couple of drivers. A couple, actually. I think it was like 4 or 5 drivers already.
Yes.
That we've lost.
Yeah, so we've as far as official retirements, we got Fredriksson, Nichols, Simon, and Plona. Those are our retirements, but of course we've had those disqualifications since then, as we see and look towards the front of the field, because things might be changing and are changing for our podium positions, as Gal Valero, the hard charger of the day. I think I'll give him driver of the day if he's able to get this 10 minutes finished up here in a good position, because he's been absolutely crazy out there on circuit and might get himself up into 2nd place here if he can get this overtake done on Simon 8. And now he's going to try and get the run through turn 4. He times it absolutely perfectly, but the thing is, he needs to try and complete this move into the chicane now. Will Simon 8 give it up? Yes, he will. He'll fall back in line and decide not to fight Valero. But Valero from P26 up into 2nd place. Crazy stuff from the 34. He went from P34 to P10 in the previous race, but now 26 to 4th in the 2nd race. He's had a very busy day.
Yeah, and I'm also surprised you mentioned it before that Valero has gotten so far to the front compared to Thibaut. Thibaut was so fast before, like unmatched pretty much, and now he's not doing so well compared to Valero.
Yeah, it is interesting. Maybe Tiba has had a bit more trouble trying to get overtakes done. Speaking of viewers, down the inside of Simon Eats there. So put viewers up in towards a podium position there. As we have a look at viewers is on board, just a little bit of a smile there, just a little bit, as he gets that pass done, hits the brakes in towards the final chicane here. 9 minutes left to go in this particular event, and meanwhile we have battles even further back. We got Tiba trying to get it, trying to get the move done here on Romero, but Romero is having none of it. You can see the flash of the lights there from Tiba, a little bit of a shake of the head as well. He looks a bit frustrated now, doesn't he?
Yeah, but they all know. Like I was about to say something regarding the small smile. Like he knows he has 9 minutes to go. He knows those 9 minutes are gonna still be tough to finish, and I think Thiba knows also. There's not much more that he can do. He's still fighting, and obviously now that the gaps are driven out, it's going to be really hard for him to go much further, you know?
Yeah, so Thiba needs to find a way through here, just to try and release some of that pent-up frustration, it feels like, because
Yeah.
if this continues on any further, I get the feeling there might be an altercation between the two of them, and you can see that Romero, he's defending, he's defending into every single one of these corners. There might have been a bit of a push through the chicane there on the part of Thiba, but it looks like they've been able to get away with it with regards to slowdown penalties and things like that. And another flash of the lights from Thiba, the universal driver signal of "I'm a little bit annoyed right now."
Oh yeah, I think some of them really are.
Yeah, it's quite often used here in Iris. I don't know how often it's used for the frustration button in the real world side of things. I imagine there's rules against it.
Well, no, I think for the lights, I'm not sure if there's really rules against it. I haven't seen anyone getting penalized for it.
Yeah, well, I think we should
definitely do that. We do that also to make the drivers in front nervous and stuff. It's a very common technique for a lot of things. Sometimes just to get the frustration out, and sometimes to make the driver in front nervous, and sometimes for both. But it's used a lot.
There we go. Like we some things we think are sim racing things are just things in general in motorsport. It's it's really funny sometimes, but
and also on the streets, you know it.
Yeah. I can neither confirm nor deny my my flashing lights at people. Okay, but we can see
for legal reasons.
Yeah, for legal reasons. Yeah. But yeah, you see the string of cars here, like involving Alexander Thiba, and Thiba has actually kind of dropped a little bit off the back of Romero here. It's I don't know whether he's just just sort of falling back just to give himself a little bit of a break at the moment, or whether or not he's potentially taken a little bit too much out of the tires and is having to be worried about cars behind. And speaking of, Kaibach really sending it on Verla there, and it causes a big stack up behind. We're 3 wide up the hill now, and guess who's going to gain 2 positions out of that? It's the one, the only Norbert Leitner. Oh, and it's going to be a big one. This is going to be a very, very big one. Oh, it's a bit of a tangle there. Down in towards the second chicane. Verla involved in it. Kaibach involved in it, and a couple more cars as well. Thiba might have just narrowly avoided that one, but that was a massive, massive instant there as Verla moving across wasn't quite clear into the braking zone and wraps himself across the nose of Ericsson behind.
That was a big one for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to get a replay of a better view of that one as well, because that happened all of a sudden. But as soon as I saw the differences in braking points in and amongst all of those cars, I knew it was going to be trouble. But you can see here the big stack up coming out of the chicane. Ericsson in that red car trying to find a way through, because he gained a whole bunch out of that. He gained all of the momentum indeed. And then coming into the corner, just not clear to go to the inside there. There's still a car with an overlap. I don't think there's much Ericsson could have done about that, really.
Exactly, it was really tight and actually quite unlucky. They touched so barely, but obviously from both sides, so that gave him the spin. And then it was just a high-speed situation. Sent him right in the wall. That sucks.
Yeah, it really does.
But let's rewind. It's 5.5 seconds to go. This is looking quite good for Maturana. Where did he start?
Well, he started P2. So he got.
Oh yeah, so he literally was one of the he was one of the last guys in the previous race, and now he's winning it. Yeah, he just has to bring this home. It's looking good for him.
Yeah, and of course, we have seen Maturana around as far as sim racing is concerned. He usually likes to take part in the endurance special events here on iRacing and in the endurance leagues and things like that. So it's definitely a racer that's used to this sort of level of competition here on iRacing, as we see Vince Peters and Alessio Bender, have a little bit of a ding-dong battle here, heading their way through towards the final sector of the lap. It's great seeing these guys fight it out, and Bender will have to try and go to the defensive inside line for the chicane here, as Peters tries an aggressive move around the outside, but that one's not going to come to fruition whatsoever, and it might stall out the run here for Vince Peters coming across the line so the move into turn 1 is not available.
Talking fight it out, let's wait and see how many penalties we're going to have post-race. I heard there's going to be some. I'm wondering who's going to be.
Yeah, we do have stewards that will look at things after this, and I think they might have their work cut out. To
I was about to say, everything. I think they have a couple of incidents that they can look at right now.
Yeah, they definitely do. As we see the cars of that was Sarah Dove and Aliu going wheel to wheel through the first sector, getting very, very close indeed. As Aliu tries to stem the bleeding of lost positions, he was one of the drivers that really benefited out of the reverse grid. Started P4 down to P12 now, which is still not a bad finish. In the grand scheme of things, you've been able to keep, put up a fight at least. The cars coming through on you to try and maintain that position.
For sure. And talking not bad finish, I'm quite proud of Sarah Dove. I think she fell back with her drift, and obviously we talked about the tires, and she managed to gain back positions and is currently on P11. And also, obviously, the gap to the front is quite big, but she's keeping it there. Quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. On the edge of the top 10 here, and it's very, very good finish as we see the top 5 decide to have a little bit of a scrap once again. It's Simonit, it's Bender, it's Peters, it's Viewers, all involved in this one. You see Ellen in the background there, potentially gaining a lot of time on these guys as well. Here's the onboard view with Viewers as he's 4th in line in this particular battle here. This one might get a little bit spicy inside the final 2 minutes of this race number 2 of this meeting at Zolder. As we see Bender looking to the inside, looking to the outside, as we see the battle going on at the front of this particular battle pack, as Peters tries to stick his nose in there, perhaps where it doesn't belong, as the guys ahead go wheel to wheel in towards turn 2 now, as Alessandro Bender, as he's got the inside line, which is the place you want to be for these turns, but it can be quite sketchy to hold it on the inside there as the tyre performance gets away from you, and he swings it in through turn 4 and is able to get through, but it's put Simonit back into a battle now with Peters. Peters actually gets a shove from the driver that we're riding on board with. That's Alessandro Viewers, but how is this going to work in towards the chicane then? Because he's seen too wide into here so many times, and this time it ends in a few more tears as Simonit gets spun around. There's a pirouette, able to get back going, and potentially another little bit of a shuffle here in the positions further up, because Peter's now having to fight out with the Viewers and, well, is able to put on the defense.
It was going on so tight for too long to end well, I guess. I was kind of waiting for something to happen. That's too bad. But like the previous race, I think it's a common thing that the last couple minutes are always the most intense ones, and they're just, giving it the last push to finish in a better position. So that's a pity for him.
John Allen looking down the inside, not successful there. It means he has a compromised exit, though, so might come under threat from Halfordson, although Halfordson's actually deciding to give him a little bit of a bump down the straight there. Not looking to try and threaten the move at all, as we have 8 seconds left on the clock. Of course, since it's going to be the start of the final lap for these guys, as time now expires. Just potentially very limited opportunities now to try and improve position by the time we get to that checkered flag. Here we are with the onboard with Halfordson. He has Ellen and Viewers a little bit further down the road, but not quite close enough to really put up any threats here just yet. But he's in the prime position to pick up the pieces just in case things go wrong between those 2 cars ahead.
Yeah, he is waiting for it. And as we know, and as we see right now, it is going to be happening.
Here we go. So, what's going to happen here down in towards the chicane, because you can see Viewers, he's taking basically in the middle of the roads there. No moves down the inside whatsoever through the chicane as they try to get the maximum out of the track limits by basically sending it over those curbs. and trying to set up for a move elsewhere on circuit. Now, you're not usually going to make one too much down in towards here, especially with how spread out they are at the moment. You're having to look potentially down in towards the hairpin, and then maybe get it done as a last-ditch move in towards the chicane. Those could be the options that you take here for the moment. Ellen is the driver that's closest to making an overtake at the moment. Viewers might have to be careful here down into this next braking zone, because Ellen's looking very threatening. He's going to take the big wide arc to try and find the speed off the corner to then carry the speed down the straight. But meanwhile, further ahead, all on his lonesome, is Sergei Maturana taking the race 2 win here at Zolder in the NGK and NTK Esports Cup. A fantastic drive indeed from a reverse grid P2. It turns into P1 for Maturana. Meanwhile, further behind, you have a hard-charging Gal Valero finishing in P2, and then Alessio Bender in P3. The battle between Ellen and Viewers ends up with Viewers coming out on top in P5, with John Ellen in P6. As we see these trickle of cars head their way across the line to finish not only their races, but the entire race meeting here at Zolder. Oh, I think I should take a breath now.
Oh yeah, you should. Very, very impressive drives there from all the drivers. It's crazy how they all kept it on track, and I'm also quite happy to see that not so many drivers after all had to go back to the pits. So that was some very, very intense racing we just saw there.
Yeah, it absolutely was, as we see a couple of the mid-pack runners head their way through. Of course, it's been a pretty chaotic event, to say the least, especially with that race number 2 start. But we had our survivors, shall we say, get themselves back through the field and end up with fantastic results indeed. Let's have a look then at your unofficial race results from race number 2. We've got Sergei Maturana winning by just shy of 4 seconds over Gal Valero. Then you've got Alessio Bender in P3. Vince Peters from near enough the back of the field ends up in P4 with Alexander Viewers in P5. Then John Allen in P6 with Michael Alfredson in P7. Alexander Tiber, he is able to get up into P8 after all is said and done, after getting that race win in race number 1. He would have been hoping to get a few more positions, but can't complain too much about a top 10 finish. Then you've got Ruben Simonitz, who was our reverse grid pole position sitter, and actually finishes inside the top 10 in that P9. Darwin Romero will round out the top 10 cars. Then you got Sarah Dove with a great finish there in P11. Jeffrey Lund, better than race 1, finishes in P12. Then you got Michael Kaibach in P13 with Megan Alio in P14. Then you got Pentola in P15 with De Battista in P16. Leitner finishes in P17. Would have been looking for a little bit more from him, I feel, in this second race, considering. Then you've got Muscat in P18, then Adati, then Ofella in P20. Then you got Suzuko there in P21, Hendricks in P22, Orban P23 with Seeley, Aaron Wen. Then you've got Muth, Vela, Verla, and Fredrickson rounding out the top 30 cars. We're getting in towards our retirements now. Then you've got Peter Zuber and Robbie McAfee, who had a big incident out there on circuit that we were able to see on the replay. Then we've got Daniel Nichols, Thomas Simon, and Dominic Ploner rounding out the 35 car finishing results. So that is the racing completely done for this first event in the NGK and NTK Esports Cup here. A lot of action out there. I'm really feeling it in the voice at the moment. I don't know about you, Patricia, but yeah, there was a lot of action out there, a lot of overtakes, a lot of side-by-side action, which is really all we could ask for.
Definitely. But it's, like I said, it's quite interesting to see McAfee that he was disqualified or didn't finish both races, even though his pace was so good. Still, yeah, we still have great drivers in front of him. I'm looking forward to see the interviews from the race 1 and race 2 winners, right? I think race 2 winner, I'm going to be curious to hear how he managed to stay in front, considering that it didn't go so well in the first race.
Yeah, we are just still waiting for our drivers to make themselves available for
Maybe they need to take a breath as well.
Yeah, I mean, but we don't. We don't get the opportunity. We have to go straight into the interviews. But yeah, it was a pretty enthralling affair with all the action that we saw out of Zolder. Because you look at this track and you think there's not going to be a lot of overtakes here. There's not a massive amount of overtaking opportunities. But somehow these guys displayed that you can go side by side through sections of this track, and you can actually sometimes get passes done cleanly.
Yeah, for that they kept it really clean. Like I said, there's not many. There's just limited possibilities for overtaking, and still they managed to have at least little contacts, let's say. And the fighting was super tight. We saw the groups; they stayed together and they were fighting to the last lap in both races. And with 35 drivers on track, that's some task.
Yeah, it really, really is. And, well, we do have the opportunity to have a little bit of a conversation with our Race 1 winner and our Race 2 P8 finisher. That is Alexander Tieber. So, Alexander, how's it going? Because we had our, the first race where you got pole position, and then you got yourself the race win as well, despite the amount of pressure that you were under towards the end. Just take me through that first race, first of all.
Yeah, it was quite good. I mean, the result was there. It was a bit tough to pull away. So it's really difficult to not cook the tires. That was a bit of a task, and I struggled a bit towards the middle of the race. But the last final laps where I could pull away again. It was quite fine towards the end. But I would have preferred to pull away all race long. But that wasn't possible. Winds was just too strong.
Did you feel nervous when you saw in the middle of that race, that relative time coming down? It was at 1.1 at its biggest, I think, but then it got down to, 0.3 of a second at one point. So did that get you nervous and you think that you cooked the tires too much in the early stages?
Not nervous, only two little moments where I made a mistake, and he was getting pretty close, and I wasn't sure if he's going to get close enough to try to make a move, but I was just focused and try to not be nervous or to
Now take me through that second race, because obviously with the format that we have here, it's a full reverse grid. So if you finish in P1, you're starting at the back for race 2. How did you personally approach that?
Actually tried to survive, but lap 1 was really chaotic, and especially in turn 1, where my spotter didn't tell me that there were 4 cars beside me, or 3, so I couldn't see them. If I would have known that, but I would have stayed more on the left side out of turn 1. So I got turned around, sadly, and that cost me a potential top 5 or top 3 finish. Because I lost quite a few seconds and I was stuck in the traffic. It's way easier if you overtake, and especially in lap 1, it's easier to getting closer to the front. But if you are stuck, in the midfield until lap 5 or 10, it's getting more difficult because you will lose more time fighting.
So very quickly to finish off, now how's the mood now going into the rest of the season? We've got this first round out of the way. Okay, we got a couple more rounds before we get this thing done. Are you thinking, already at this stage that you think you're in with the championship, or are we having to wait for another couple of races for you to really come to that conclusion?
I don't know. I'm just thinking race by race now, and let's see what I can do in the next races, especially in the reversed grid races. It's quite fun, to be honest, but it can be quite chaotic. So let's see. And I was actually surprised by Vince's pace in race 1, and so I think it's going to be exciting.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Alex. It was a fantastic effort from you, and hopefully that effort continues on in the rest of the season. So we'll see you.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Well, there we go, Patricia. That was Alexander Tieber, our first race winner of the entire season. It was really great seeing him out there in that first race, but of course he did struggle in that second race, and going from leading the race, at some points quite comfortably, to having to be put back in the pack trying to come through. That is a very difficult adjustment, right?
For sure, and that's what we're expecting, obviously, that he had to struggle in the beginning, and then when the gaps were open, it's quite hard to close them. So that's what he struggled with. I think from the pace, he would have been able to get back to the front, but just sooner in the race. And since that didn't happen, he had to stay where he was. But still, a great performance from him. 1 race win and a couple points in the second race. Obviously, we're still looking for the championship. We're waiting. We're building up to the grand finale. So there's still everything to win and everything to lose. So obviously great to have the first title in your hands and be the first of the season. But so we have many races to go and many points to collect.
We won't have the opportunity right now to talk to Maturana because, again, he hasn't made himself available. But we will actually be able to talk to our second place finisher in this race too, which is Gal Valero. And if you ask me, I don't have any authority on these things. However, I personally would put you as driver of the day, because not for your qualifying performance, because that was shocking. Okay, but but your race performance. That was crazy stuff. How did it feel behind the wheel when you had to not once but twice get your way through the field?
You didn't get it. It's all part of the plan.
Plan.
There was a plan made about 5 minutes before the race. Oh, reverse grid, complete reverse grid. Let's go to the back. First race, and then second race. Everybody that is slower is in front. Amazing.
There we go.
Everybody is faster is in the back. They have all the work to do. So,
well, it's again, it's like Alonso. It's L plan. It was just all. It's just all part of the plan, and you were able to quite effectively work your way through the fields, and especially in that second race, you got onto the podium. Did you ever think that was a possibility today to have a podium finish out of that?
When you have a big grid like this with a car like this, anything is possible. You just have to not believe that you just also have to be fast, but yeah, you can always have an opportunity that presents itself. So why not? I'm kind of used now with reverse grids, thanks to another league. So yeah, I was ready to cut through the field, and I felt it went quite well.
Are we sticking with this plan for future races in the season? Are you gonna completely not do qualifying all the time now? Is that the way you're approaching this?
Listen, I'm not gonna spoil you. I would cut the surprise out of it. You just have to tune in for next round.
Oh, he's leaving us on edge here. But Gael, it's been a joy talking to you. We'll leave you get back and enjoy the rest of your evening. But I guess we'll see what happens in future races, right?
Exactly. Thanks for having me, and see you next time.
All right, there we go. He can become commentator as well. He has outros and everything. Yeah, but yeah, Patricia, that was one of the most enjoyable interviews I've done this year.
Hilarious guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. Like, not only has he got my driver of the day, but he also comes in and does an interview like that and becomes potentially the fan favorite.
Interview of the season 23, at least, for sure. Yeah. Yeah,
that was absolutely amazing. I'm kind of semi-rooting for him now for the rest of the season. But yeah, it was. Yeah, but he did get a lot of opportunities to show his stuff. Yes, he can joke. Yes, he can have a lot of fun. But he's a very, very quick driver as well, and that was displayed out here today.
Obviously, for sure, yeah, and that's the balance. Obviously, it's the same in racing everywhere, whether it's sim racing, whether it's real racing, whether it's GT cars or Formula One, you have to be the viewer's favorite, and I think he's a great candidate to become a good racing driver, which includes not only being quick on track, but also knowing how to, be in public. So he's a cool guy. I'm rooting for him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is just the first round of the season. We have another round coming up, of course. And this is one of those situations where we have potentially a little bit of a pretty big break, because we've got the Christmas period, we've got New Year, so we can't exactly schedule races over those periods. So we're actually having to wait a decent amount of time, 19th of January, before we get our next race weekend, and that's going to be at Motorland Aragon there, which is going to be a very, very interesting prospect for these drivers.
Yeah, it's a cool track. I really enjoyed driving it. It's very hard to foresee the track, obviously, because it's very uphill, downhill, so you don't see the next corner. So again, great racing. I've said it before, I'm saying it again. NGK NTK really chose the best tracks for this cup. So even though it's a month to wait, I think we're all looking forward to it. Let's have a great Christmas time. Let's have some days off, and then come back stronger and enjoy some racing into the season of 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited. It's going to be absolutely fantastic as we tackle the very hilly nature of Aragon in just over a month's time. But if you just wanted to sum up this race, Patricia, what would you say? Because for me, it was fun but pretty chaotic.
I was about to say chaotic. If you make me choose a word, I would say chaotic. But then again, it keeps it interesting for the rest of the season. Like, I wouldn't be able to say, okay, there's 5 top drivers which are going to be in the front for the whole season. For sure, there's going to be track favorites for each driver. Also, all of them were super tied together. So, and again, it's a month to go. There's a lot of time for practice and, you know, preparation. So even though this race was chaotic, still very interesting. I think the next races are going to be much different. And also, we will see a lot of different drivers on the podium. That's my prediction, and I'm looking forward to it because that's the best case scenario.
Yeah, I think so too. It's been an absolute pleasure commentating on this race with you, Patricia. It gives me positive vibes going forward, but unfortunately we do have to bring this broadcast to a close. This has been a lot of fun for the first rounds, the first race meeting of the season for the NGK and NTK Esports Cup. My name's been Connery Maddock. I've been joined by Patricia Stalitzane here. Congratulations to Alexander Tiber and Sergei Maturana for taking their first race wins of the season. But we'll be heading to Aragon in just over a month's time, so you don't want to miss it. But for now, we will have to say goodbye.